The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Mahatma Gandhi. Welcome to Casa De Confidence, a podcast for you. You'll hear some incredible women
and some awesome, cool dudes
going confidently in the direction of their dreams and living in the purpose of their heart.
You're our host,
Julie DeLucca-Collins, and you are our sidekick. # handsome hot husband.
That again.
And the producer of the show.
That I am.
I am an author, speaker, coach, dreamer, and most of all,
we help people go in the direction of their dreams
and support them on their purpose. So pull up a chair,
grab a drink,
and make yourself at home, because our casa
is your casa.
Casa De Confidence, checking in for you. This is Julie, your host.
This is Dan, your host number 2.
I don't know what to say. What do you mean the beginning says welcome back? I don't understand. Like, we always say welcome back. What
do we say welcome back all the time?
Yeah, we do.
All right, hold on. Let me see what the intro says, because I don't want to be repetitive. Hold on.
Welcome to Casa De Confidence. I guess we do repeat ourselves. Look at that.
Yes, we do.
Wow. Well, you know what? Sometimes repetition helps. So that people can remember who they're listening to.
Yeah. So anyway.
Hey, nice haircut.
You like my haircut?
Not really, but I know it helps you.
It does help me. It helps me a lot.
Tell people why your haircut helps you.
Oh, I finally did it. A fresh cut, a fresh start. You know, sometimes change feels good. And for me, it feels good. And we've talked about this on the show before, like the last time I did it. At a certain point, I get frustrated because for the people out there who do not know, but I have a tic disorder, and that is a tic disorder called Tourette's, and really bothers me. And when my hair gets thick, it makes me tick. And then I get a sore neck. Then I get a sore neck, which causes more ticks. It's a vicious circle, and cutting my hair helps. So I went no guard, clippers, zip, go.
Oh my God.
I left the beard though. I think it makes me look like a tough guy.
It makes you look like the cleaning guy.
Mr. Clean?
Yeah.
Well, he's a big buff guy. Mm-hmm. So anyway, after all, I am handsome hot husband, aren't I?
Look at you owning your thing.
Oh
Look
my
at you owning it. I like it. I like how you own it. So,
yes,
I am going to leave you to your own devices next week.
Yes, you are. You're going to the Cape. The Cape of Cod.
The Cape Cod.
Cape Cod. It's where the Mayflower was parked for weeks or months before they made landfall in Massachusetts.
Really?
Yeah. They hung out there.
Well, listen.
They send little parties over, and so.
We're not going deep into the Cape. Our house is in Sandwich.
Sandwich?
Yeah, it's the first place you enter into the Cape.
Sounds like my kind of place. Yummy. Love a good sandwich.
I think there's an inn called Daniel Webster, not where we're staying, but I think that's the other thing. So I'll be thinking of you because I'm in Sandwich with an inn called Daniel. See, I can't avoid you, Daniel Collins.
Daniel Webster. Man responsible from changing our English language from the English language.
Okay.
He's the dictionary guy, right?
Yeah, I know he's the dictionary guy.
Father, blah, blah, blah.
I used to see his statue every day when I would walk my dogs in Central Park. Because there's Daniel Webster as you come in through Strawberry Fields and you're walking to Bethesda Fountain. There's a statue of Daniel Webster there.
Well, if it weren't for Daniel Webster, we'd be speaking Oxford language. We'd be using the Oxford Dictionary rather than the Webster's. We use
the Oxford Dictionary and Oxford writing when we write show notes for Campus Chronicles, one of our shows.
Yeah, one of our shows based in the UK. I got to make sure I research terminology and make sure I'm speaking or writing in the Oxford Dictionary vernacular.
Ooh, look at you fanciness.
So So, Julie, you went out last night.
I went out Friday night.
Oh, it's Sunday already. You went out Friday night.
Hey, by the way, I have to tell you, I was so proud of myself because I thought I'm going to this not networking. It's a fundraising event. And I was so excited because it was a night out, me, myself, and I was leaving you and my mom, and I was going to see some friends and, just right up my alley. So I it was at the convention center next door to the Marriott
in
Hartford,
Connecticut.
So I leave, I get there at 6:30 and so excited because, I had half an hour and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to show up early and stand around for half an hour. I'm going to take myself to the bar and buy myself a drink.
And I was proud of you for being early.
Yeah. Well, I went to buy myself a drink and I'm sitting and enjoying a nice little cocktail, a cucumber martini. And then I get a text from my friend who I was meeting at the thing. And she says, "Is everything okay?" And I thought, is she seeing me? She's like, "What's going on?" And then I said, "Yes, why?" And she's like, "Well, you're not here yet." And I said, "Yes, I am. I'm at the Marriott." She's like, "Well, the event started at 5. I'm like, "What? I thought it was 7. I missed the cocktail hour there. So it's a good thing I got a cocktail in. And I missed
you had your
the
own
networking.
private cocktail.
I know. I had my own private cocktail hour. So I ran upstairs and I got there just in time for dinner. There was a great performance by one of the percussion groups of students here in Hartford. And I'm so glad that I had an opportunity to attend.
I'm glad you were there for the main event.
Correct.
And for people who don't know, it was a Hands-on Hartford dinner. Hands-on Hartford is an incredible organization that does good in the community through their supportive housing program. They help individuals not just survive, but live with dignity.
Living with dignity, I think, is something that the more challenging that things get, it is the one thing that people continue to struggle with, even though it's not just financial struggles that they have, but we're vilifying people for being in need lately. And it's incredibly heartbreaking for me. You and I had this discussion yesterday when we went to brunch because I have been really struggling with seeing how we look at people in need and we say, "Oh, get a job. Look at these poor, lazy people." But the reality is that most households are 2 paychecks away from being in need. And organizations like Hands on Hartford, they're not only giving people a fresh start, but they're really helping the unhoused, individuals that need comprehensive services, whether it be health or finding a job or going and getting an ID, because that way they can apply for a job. They're helping them with a lot of stuff. They also have,
and they're making sure families have access to healthy food, and they have their backpack nutrition program,
which is really cool.
Community pantry. That's through the MANA food access programs.
They take these backpacks and they have school supplied backpacks that kids come and pick up if the parents cannot afford to buy a backpack for them. And inside the backpack, they also put healthy snacks, because a lot of times the only meal that some children get is the meal that they get in school. There's The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls that talks about that. If that's a book, a memoir from her story. But yeah,
check out Hands on Hartford. They have a homeless prevention program, and they have a day program for a drop-in. It's like a drop-in resource center offering shelter connections, health screenings. It's such a holistic approach. It's not just about a meal or a roof. It's about restoring dignity and trying to get you what you need to change your situation. So, Julie.
So, Dan, I want to just make one last point, even though you may want to transition, because here's the thing that the listeners really should keep in mind. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that. At the heart of dignity life matters. And in a world where people are really struggling, it is important to know that when you give, there is a study, right, from the University of Zurich and Harvard Business School that found that when we give, our brain lights up as the same regions as when we experience pleasure. And it's so easy to get caught up in minutia of the world. And if you're struggling, find a way that you can give back. It doesn't have to be millions of dollars. It doesn't have to be, a lot. It can be just as talking about something that maybe someone can find awareness of, or find ways to volunteer, because that, and I've said it before, when we give to others, we receive so much more than what we're giving.
So when you give, everyone wins.
Absolutely. And on that note, I've been really carving out some time also for individuals that want to show up for themselves and perhaps give to others. We have our co-working time on Mondays, free co-working at 11 a.m. Eastern time. The reason I love this is because we give our time to encourage each other, to support one another, but we're also getting time back because we're planning our week. We're working on things that really need to be moved in our business. And this has been probably one of the most fun things that I do during the week is the co-working time.
Cool. But I think we need to move on to our guest. Hey, our guest today is someone who's become one of our clients.
Yeah, she did. But I love the work that she's doing so much that we're bringing her back for multiple episodes, and not because she's our client. We talked about her coming back even before she said, hey, can you help me with my YouTube channel? And we said, oh my gosh, we would love to, because her content is so juicy and so good. And I love learning from her. And by the way, the stuff that she shares, every time I see some of her content, I think, oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. She's brilliant, honestly. And I'm not saying that because we work with her. I'm saying that because people need to know how brilliant she is.
So today's guest is Bev Mitelman from Securely Loved.
And her expertise is in attachment theory. And it's needed. So we have to find, right? We all have an attachment style. She has a quiz that you can take to find out what your attachment style is. But she helps people rewrite their stories and build healthier patterns. And I think whether we are in a relationship or in the work that we do, business or corporate or however, right? We are showing up with the baggage or the patterns that we've created. And some of these attachment styles are not healthy. So we have to find ways on really shifting and understanding why we show up the way we do and how we can show up better.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been learning a lot just by editing some of her videos. It's very interesting things and eye-opening things on why we do, or why we as humans do the things that we do in relationships, why we dive in headlong, why we comply too easily, why we pull back, why we, give a lot of space, why we don't give enough space, and, the myriad of things, how we argue or how we have sex.
Oh, okay. now we're going to talk about
interesting.
sex. Let's talk about sex, baby. Okay,
but check out Securely Loved on YouTube with Bev Mitelman.
Yeah.
It's some really good content there that'll really, really help you understand your relationship a little bit better.
Yeah. One of the things lately that I've been noticing is that I am really craving time alone, and that I don't like it when people kind of infringe on my time alone. So that's part of this whole attachment style thing. And the other thing that we talk about is working through challenges in a relationship before trying to I don't know. I guess handling conflict is part of working through these challenges, right? And that's part of what Bev is really teaching individuals.
Let's take a quick break.
I want to pause for a moment because if you're listening to this conversation and realizing that some of these patterns, like people pleasing, second guessing yourself, or feeling stuck in the messy middle, are showing up in your business, I want you to know that you're not alone. So many other women that I work with are hustling hard but not seeing consistent results, feeling scattered because they're trying to do all the things, or struggling to make decisions without doubting themselves, or just plain exhausted from running their business without a clear plan. And that's exactly why I created the Confident You CEO Retreat. It's a space where you step away from the noise, you get clarity in what actually matters, and walk away with a 90-day roadmap that feels doable and not overwhelming. If you've been craving focus, confidence, and strategy that actually works, this retreat is for you, my friend. Head into goconfidentlycoaching.com and you can save your spot at the website. Now, let's get back into this important conversation.
Well, I think we've talked about it enough. I think we ought to let everyone listen to the episode and, stop listening to your handsome hot husband.
And the brilliant wife. Oh, boy.
She certainly is humble, isn't she?
Yeah,
So,
definitly.
anyway.
Hey, if I don't toot my own horn, who will? And that's the lesson for everyone. Go toot your own
Toot
horn.
your horn. Toot. Well, we already tooted that horn, so let's jump on this train and listen to this episode with Julie DeLucca-Collins and the incredible Bev Mitelman from Securely Loved. Go check her out on YouTube. Don't forget.
Hello, my friends. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where love felt more like chaos than comfort? I've been there. Where you question, and this is the thing, right? We question if this is how it's supposed to be. And our guest today is someone that intimately knows that feeling, and she's turned her pain into a powerful mission. Bev Mitelman grew up in an emotionally uncertain, but today she's helping women rewrite their story narratives, whether you struggle with insecure attachment or are learning to reconnect with yourself, post a divorce in midlife. This conversation will leave you feeling seen, supported, and most importantly, securely loved, which we all want. So welcome to the show, Bev.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you and your audience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mentioned a little bit of how I had been in a relationship where it was not very comforting. And I remember thinking to myself, is this what it's supposed to be like?
Mm-hmm.
And I am sure I'm not alone. But before we dive into that, I want to ask you a little bit of your personal story, because I think that helps to put into context for the listener where you came from, basically. And let's start with your childhood. You said you grew up in chaos. Can you describe what that looked like?
Yeah. So, I'll try to keep this brief, but I know that many of us grew up in homes where the love and the consistency and the emotional attunement that we had with our parents or our caregivers was not consistent, right? So we're going to talk a lot about today what children need when they grow up. And really what they need is safety.
Yeah.
And how do they find that safety? Through consistent emotional attunement of their caregivers, right? So not perfection, but predictable. And so the environment that I grew up in was not predictable. I think I spent most of my years walking on eggshells. We'll talk about the reasons for this, but there could be a multitude of reasons that a child can feel emotionally unsafe in their environment. And so there's not options as a child for what to do with that.
Yeah.
And the way that I took it, it was, okay, I'm going to try to be perfect, which as an adult, we know is an ideal that doesn't really exist. But as a child, you're like, if I can be perfect,
then they'll
no one
love
will
me.
get angry at me. They will love me. I'll never get in trouble. Right. And so that was my strategy. And so perfectionism is really sort of what I clung to tightly. And I sort of did everything by the book that was expected of me. I really, with the life choices that I made, I got married young. He was a beautiful partner. We had 2 beautiful kids. Thank God they're well. I really excelled in my career. I mean, by the time I was 30, I was working as an executive. I was married. I had 2 young kids. So I was really type A, like go.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Right. And what people don't realize is people say, oh, well, that's just my personality. No, it was more so that I felt that if I didn't do all of these things, I would be criticized or unloved, or I wouldn't get the attention that I needed, because the way in which I got the attention from my caregivers, for me, was through my achievements.
Yeah.
Not just because I existed, but it was like, Bev always brought home straight A's as a student. So let's celebrate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I got all the awards and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed something very interesting in the last few months. And I've come to understand that as a trauma response. And again, I grew up in a loving household, but obviously, there are some deficiencies there. And my husband tends to get a little bit annoyed, but that's really where he's coming from as well, because he'll say, maybe something went wrong, or, I messed up something, and I'll immediately, rather than saying, oh, okay, or whatever, I immediately jump into the justification, why that happened. And, just to show, okay, like I'm not broken, and I realize that I don't have to justify with him. He's fine. Or sometimes it has nothing to do with anything. And I immediately go into that response. And I'm really adamant about
that trigger is telling you, like, when you feel criticized, you feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so wonderful that you've made that connection there.
Yeah. And by the way, I think that a lot of that also came in my early relationship from my first marriage. And of course, we can dig into that later. But I wonder if there was a moment for you that you realized that your relationship patterns weren't working, and that your past may be affecting your future as you continue to evolve.
I was one of those people that sort of was on, like, I had like 2 speeds, like awake and asleep.
Familiar.
I didn't understand how to relax. It didn't feel comfortable for me. And so for me, which I believe is the story for a lot of people, I went until I hit the wall.
Yeah.
And emotionally, I was so burnt out that, of course, it impacted physically as well. I was dealing with generalized anxiety. For me, that's how it came out. People deal with all sorts of things, depression being a big one as well. For me, it was mostly anxiety. And when I hit the wall, I decided, okay, I need to start making some changes, right? Like, what is really not working here? And interestingly enough, I'm almost 50. So this started for the last decade, it started like as soon as I hit 40.
Okay.
Which is also around the time that we start going into perimenopause.
Of course.
Yeah. But I didn't know that at the time. It's only in the last year that all of a sudden people are talking about perimenopause. And
I know. I hear it a lot more than I ever did. And that's really one of the things that for us, I'm hoping that we can redefine this for other young women as they're coming up in their 20s and their 30s, so that they realize that they're not broken, and they realize, like, listen, these are the ways in which you can navigate this new era.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I went through a little bit of a lengthy process to realize that, I was feeling so anxious because I was misaligned to my true authentic self. I was all my behaviors and thoughts were patterned around trying to please others around me, do the right thing, be the good girl, that sort of thing. But it wasn't authentic to who I was. And so you can imagine that what I was, I knew I didn't feel well. right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a very lonely experience, or you don't feel well. And I had tried to get help from various different sources and therapies. And when I tripped over the work on attachment theory many years ago, that is what had such a profound impact on
Mm.
me. And that allowed me to understand my triggers. Why are my thoughts wired this way? Why do I behave this way?
Yeah.
Um, and then I could change things, right? So,
Mhm.
and having spent my entire career working with adults in professional development, personal training, and that sort of world, I then took my entire focus into attachment theory.
Mhm.
And so it's been incredibly rewarding because I know how impactful this work is.
Yeah. I think that, you've hit it in the nail on the head. It is an impactful type of work because it's not unique to just a few of us. It's very
Wow.
something more common than people realize. Now, I am sure that we have a listener that is probably feeling stuck or anxious or it has that avoidant attachment. What are some of the signs and how can they start to shift out of that pattern?
Yeah. So I'm going to take a step back here and
Mhm.
just, we may have people who don't really know about attachment styles.
Yes.
Maybe I'll sort of give a little bit of
Very
a
good. Yes, you're right.
background.
We should do that
Um,
first.
Well, I want to make sure everyone's sort of, following the conversation with us. So, attachment styles is really the way in which we form an emotional bond,
Mhm.
right? And every human on this planet has a particular style.
Yeah.
So, and that style is patterned into us when we're really young, like our youngest years from like 0 to 5. Depending on what we learned, what we felt, what we saw, what we experienced vis-a-vis our caregiver, that gives us like a template of this is how we are going to interact with others in the world.
Okay.
So everyone has an attachment style. We're not talking about a personality disorder or mental
Mhm.
illness, right? But depending on what you learned, you either learned that the world was, a beautiful set of connections and you could trust yourself, you could trust others, or you learned that you could not trust yourself, you could not trust others, and you
Mhm.
developed survival strategies,
Okay.
right? So this is where we start seeing the different styles emerge. So in the big picture, we've got two broad categories, what we call secure attachment and
Mhm.
insecure attachment.
Okay.
Now, secure attachment forms when a child is very young again and learns that the world is safe. So the parent does a good enough job. There's no such
Mhm.
thing as perfection, but a good enough
Right.
job of creating an environment for the child whereby they learn about their own emotions. They learn that it's
Mhm.
safe to express their emotions. They learn it's safe to be themselves authentically. And they also learn that they can predict the behavior of their caregiver, which means
Mhm.
like, if I start to cry and I'm sad, the caregiver will respond
Well,
to me in a
respond. Yeah.
healthy way,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. I like that.
So, yeah, and it's so important, right? Because it
Mhm.
means, again, I trust that I can identify what I'm feeling and I trust that the person's going to respond to me in a
Yeah.
healthy way. So I developed secure attachment. And as I grow older, these folks tend to do very well in long-term relationships.
Mhm.
They're independent, but they also enjoy being in couples. They have generally very good skills at regulating their emotions. They're good at
Mhm.
communicating. They're good at setting boundaries. It's sort of the utopia for where we
Right.
want to be.
Right.
So, what happens if a child doesn't receive that sort of
Mhm.
predictable, consistent emotional attunement? Well, we then flip over to the other side, the bucket of insecure. Now,
Mhm.
in North America, it's about 50-50.
I
50% of
could see
people.
that. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the statistics vary a little, but for simplicity, we say about half and half, right?
Mhm.
And it's also, attachment styles is on a spectrum, which means,
Mhm.
very few people are entirely securely attached, but they're sort of closer to that than
Right.
others. So what happens is, sorry, did you?
No, 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 no. I'm following. So I'm glad
Okay.
I'm glad we're going in this direction. So I follow you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Excellent. So if we look at the insecure attachment, we have 3 subcategories.
Mm-hmm.
You'll often hear that there are 4 attachment styles. What they're talking about is secure attachment and then the 3 insecure attachment styles.
Okay.
Okay. So on the spectrum of insecure attachments, we have someone who's anxious, preoccupied. And then on the other side, we have someone who's dismissive, avoidant.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in the middle, with traits of the anxious and traits of the avoidant, we have the fearful avoidance.
Okay.
Now, these 3 different styles have very specific characteristics, emotional patterns, patterns in terms of communication, conflict, setting boundaries, all very different depending on the type of interaction they had with their caregiver.
Okay.
So someone who's anxious, preoccupied, generally speaking, their like emotional patterns are often, they often feel sad, they feel lonely, they feel not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Their core wounds, like that they're carrying around from childhood, generally we see the top wound is I will be abandoned or I was abandoned, right?
Right,
So it's
right.
that abandonment. I'm not likable. I'm not lovable. I will be excluded. These are the types of things. So
Mm-hmm.
what we find is these folks grow up and very predictably they do very specific things. One, they generally surround themselves with a lot of people. These are people who have a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they have lifelong friends, but they're surrounded by a lot of people. They don't like being alone.
Yeah.
So in terms of emotional regulation, they never learned how to self-soothe. And they hold very little trust in themselves. They're very reliant on the opinion and input of everyone external to them, which is why they generally have large social circles.
Right.
They're also the people that we find, for example, who become teachers. They like being surrounded by lots of people all day long. They love it. It feeds them, right?
Yeah.
Right? Especially if they have a wound around I'm unlikable, you can see why getting the love and attention from a group of kids would help quell that.
Right.
Right. So we see a lot of these. Yeah, it's interesting. It's quite
so fascinating. I'm loving this. I'm loving this. And I'm writing a few things down. So this is good.
Perfect. Now, if we take it into the romantic sense, what's interesting about these folks is that they generally, as a pattern, will chase after someone who is emotionally unavailable or who falls in the dismissive avoidance side. Why? Because, especially romantic partners, what we tend to do is we tend to recreate a dynamic that is familiar to us from childhood.
Of course.
Right. Subconsciously, we don't do this in a conscious way. Nobody says, I'm going to go find someone who's going to treat me poorly like my father did.
Right.
No, what happens is the mind becomes attracted to what they see as familiar. Because it's like, oh, wait, I know how to do this. That's right. That's right. I know how to survive.
I don't have to learn a new way of relating to this person.
This is what I see as normal, right? This is my baseline normal. Yeah. So essentially these people, they are, well, we talk about how they often pair up with people who are dismissive avoidance, right? When they were children, what they did was they generally got some love from their parents, right? They weren't entirely neglected. They got some love to the point where they knew that it felt good, but they weren't entirely sure when it was going to be given. So the chasing starts in childhood. Now we're talking about like a parent, for example, who's an alcoholic, right? Or a parent, for example, that has too many children in the home. So this parent may be really loving and warm to a child one day, and the next day might be mean and cruel, or might ignore the child the next day.
Yeah.
Right. So that unpredictability is what creates this sort of need for the person to chase after someone else for that external validation.
Right.
Yeah. And so we often see this pairing where people who are anxious, preoccupied, they end up in relationships with those who are emotionally unavailable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm picturing, and it's very interesting. I've been working with a client and of course, I'm a business strategist. We typically talk about how they're building their business, but obviously mindset comes into it. Now, I am not
yeah.
a therapist, but I can see a little bit of how they relate in the world and a little bit of some of the things that they're currently struggling with and without giving away who it is, they definitely struggle, right? With wanting the appreciation or support of a spouse, and yet the spouse is very ambivalent to
hmm
them. And the more that happens, the more that they're looking to, they joined all the groups. They're, into, I'm going to be in that social. They want to go away. And it really affects their everyday because they're looking for validation everywhere else except finding it within themselves.
Reassurance, attention, validation. They really have not learned in childhood how to give this to themselves.
Mm.
So again, when we look at the equation of trust, they do not trust themselves. Generally, we're talking about low self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like, even if they were to go, someone who's anxious, preoccupied, if they were to go out and buy a new car, they would always bring a friend with them because they don't trust themselves to
Yeah.
make a decision on their own.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen that. And even with their
Yeah,
business, they're always looking for
right.
validation. Like, am I doing this right? And a lot of times that accountability, they're looking for the person that is going to agree that they're doing it right and give them the praise because they're looking for the validation outside of themselves.
Yeah, yeah, because they haven't learned how to do that yet for themselves, right? But this is
Yeah, and that's
something
what we're
that,
hoping we help individuals with.
right. So, and to some degree, it's sad because when we
Mhm.
talk about those that are securely attached, they learned how to do that in
Yeah,
childhood,
right.
right? And so, it's just a skill. Emotional
Yeah.
regulation is a skill that they just haven't learned
Mhm.
yet. But your attachment style impacts your emotional patterns, your behavior, your thought patterns, like pervasively in all aspects of your life.
Mhm.
People think it's just in your romantic life. That's not true.
No, not
So,
at all.
yeah, so someone who's got a strong core wound of, for example, I'm not good enough,
Mhm.
um, they will never, for example, apply for a promotion at work.
Really?
Right.
That's
Because
huge.
it's huge because they still believe they got the message in childhood that they weren't good enough.
Mhm.
And so they're going to put their head down and they're not going to make any
Wow.
waves. And they're usually very congenial. But they're not authentic. What that means is that they learned that they couldn't show up in the world authentically to themselves. The way they keep themselves safe is
Mhm.
they please everyone else.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
I see that. I see that so much,
mhm,
and even in
yeah,
myself sometimes. And you have a quiz on the website, and we'll talk a little bit more about
I
that
do.
before you go. And I meant to take it before we spoke, but it'll be interesting. I'll put it in the show notes what my attachment style is.
Yeah, please do, because
Yeah.
this is really it's really impactful, right? It sort of
Mhm.
gives you some
Yeah.
great insights and awareness into your own mind and your own patterns and your own behaviors.
Oh,
And
100%.
it's
Yeah.
so liberating when you can get to a
Oh,
place and go, why am I doing
yeah.
this?
Like, oh, I get it. I remember now.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, I've been doing this for 30 years. At one point it made sense. This
Yeah.
kept me safe, but
Right.
I'm no longer in the same scenario. So
Mhm. Yeah.
do I need to continue doing this? Like, so, that critical thought comes a little later when we're older.
Yeah, for
I'll
sure.
jump into our friends in the world of
Yeah.
dismissive avoidance.
Yeah, I love
Okay.
that.
So we got this sort of spectrum, right? It's a
Mhm.
continuum. Those who are really anxiously attached
Yeah.
and those who are avoidantly attached, dismissive avoidance. Now, dismissive avoidance typically came out of a home where there was emotional neglect.
Okay.
And one of the interesting things is I've had countless conversations with people who are dismissive avoidant. They
Mhm.
will tell me straight up, I had a pretty good childhood. Like,
Right.
Nobody hit me. I had 3 meals a day. I had a warm bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, did anyone hug you? No. Anyone tell you that they loved you? No.
Ooh, okay.
Did anyone give you a pat on the back when you got a good report card or scored a goal or something in soccer? No, my parents weren't like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm talking about is emotional attunement, right?
Okay.
Which is being able to actually listen, understand, and connect to someone else on an emotional front without invalidating, without being defensive, without getting angry. And so this emotional neglect piece, for those who are dismissive avoidant, they've done such a good job at sort of repressing their emotions that they don't even realize most of the time this is what they've experienced.
Okay.
So a child who's emotionally neglected, really what they learn very early on is I have me, myself, and I to count on. And so there's no point. It's like feigned helplessness. Like there's no point in me asking you for help because Julie, if I ask you for help, you're not going to help me.
No.
So
That's
asking.
what they know. Yeah.
That's what they know. And so they become overly self-reliant, hyper independent. They have a very hard time, they move very slowly in relationships. They trust themselves because they know that they will do well by themselves, but they have very little trust in the world around them. They've been disappointed over and over. They tend to appear secretive. They don't like people coming into their space. They really need to self-isolate in order to emotionally regulate.
Okay.
But we see, a standard degree of like low level of irritability there, emotional dysregulation, also anxiety, but it's hidden in this group. Right. And so their core wound, when we're talking about the person who's anxious, preoccupied, saying their top wound is I will be abandoned.
Right.
The top wound for someone who is dismissive avoidant is a shame wound. Yeah.
Okay.
I will be rejected.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm there with you. I think that one of the biggest things that through my life that I've dealt with is definitely some of the patterns of shame. And, and again, I had a loving household, and sometimes it's so difficult or challenging to even say that, right? Because people around us have not been perfect. And I had a lot of shifts. My parents divorced when I was 5. My mom and we moved, we lived with my maternal grandparents. My mom, not that she wasn't present, but she was studying, and we spent a lot of time with nannies, with other people that loved us, but definitely, there was a difference of, I don't even know how to describe, but yeah. So, and I don't want to turn this into a therapy session, but definitely that's the thing,
that's
right?
Okay. You know what? The beautiful thing about this work is that, people can start to identify themselves in these patterns because we all fall into, we all have a primary style and then usually a secondary style, which means you might see bits of yourself here and bits of yourself there.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that's very easy to tell sort of where you fall is when it comes to conflict, because your attachment style is pretty delineated by that. So we have 4 different trauma responses, right? So we often talk about fight or flight, right? That's an obvious one, but there's 2 others that are not talked about as often. One is a freeze response, when you just freeze up. And the other one is fawn. And fawning is to people please. Right. And so the method by which you adopt in terms of when you're under threat or perceived threat or conflict is usually a very good indicator of your primary attachment style. So someone who is anxious, preoccupied, they will either fawn, people please, or they will fight.
Yeah. Okay.
But they will activate towards you. Right. So you can see it's a towards you. I'm going to fight or I'm going to please you. But someone who's dismissive avoidant, they will deactivate. They will move away from you. So they will flee, like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Or they will freeze.
Oh.
Right. So the way in which we behave actually is very tied to our attachment style. So I
Interesting.
would ask you, if you're in a situation and in conflict, or you feel threatened,
Hmm.
where do you normally fall? What's your trauma response normally?
Normally, it's definitely not flight.
Okay.
Um, and I wouldn't call myself a people pleaser, but I will. Okay, let me fight for that, and I'm
Okay.
immediately going to. And that's really the emotional regulation that in my 30s and 40s I had to do a lot of the work with, because all of a sudden, if I feel threatened, I'm ready to battle, and I had to realize that that was how I was interpreting someone's thoughts or
Yeah.
behaviors, and it wasn't necessarily what they intended,
Right.
or that they were even thinking of me, right?
It's almost really liberating,
Yeah.
because we take things,
Mhm.
people say, don't take things so personally.
Yeah.
We take everything personally. When someone talks to
Mhm.
us, we assume that they're referencing us.
Right,
I
right.
mean, that's just a little of how we're wired. But the truth is that, most of the time, 9 out of the 10
Mhm.
times, when someone behaves the way they do, even if they're interacting with you directly, it has very little to do with you.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I went on the Camino de Santiago, and I think that, this is 2016. And I use a lot of that trip in the analogies, because they help me really be able to process certain things. And when I encounter someone, for instance, in the trail, then you begin to speak to them, and they were carrying their backpack, and they had their own load. So the same thing happens, I think, in the way I see it now in my life. When I am having a conversation with someone or a friend, or interacting, I've learned to say this person has their own load, and it
Hmm.
has nothing to do with me. And if it does, that's because of their load. And
Yes, exactly.
I don't have to react to that. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been huge. Now, there's some times in which I will retreat. If
Hmm.
I'm, okay, I'm
That
done
doesn't surprise
today.
me.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
done with you. Goodbye. See you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's okay too, right?
Right. Right.
What's interesting again is that we all have very defined filters. It does play
Hmm.
into attachment theory too, right? So,
Yeah.
if you can have 1,000 people watch this podcast, and
Mhm.
1,000 people will walk away with a different meaning,
Oh,
because
yeah.
what we tend to do is we tend to look for validation,
Mhm.
evidence to
Yeah.
support what we
What we
already believe to
see.
be true. Right.
Absolutely.
And
It's
so
so
it's
God.
like,
Oh
I
my
knew
God.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
I knew it. I knew it. That's what they meant.
I knew I was right on
Um,
that front.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've been watching a couple different people that I know, and sort of, sitting in the middle of this, and watching the one person people pleaser 100%. And but now anything that is said or done by the other person is totally, an attack on them.
Hmm.
And it could be something totally unrelated, but they assume it's an
Yeah.
attack on them, and it's
So
so interesting to watch
that
that.
real sensitivity to criticism is a
Mhm.
characteristic we find very heavily with the dismissive avoidance. They are very,
Mhm.
very sensitive to
Yeah,
criticism,
yeah.
right? Because it goes back to their core wound,
Mhm.
right? They're
Yeah.
defective in their mind. It's a shame wound. There's
Mhm.
something wrong with me. So these folks have a very hard time getting into a romantic relationship, because the
Mhm.
idea of intimacy feels just too vulnerable.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so, you could imagine that, like, the anxious person and the avoidant person, when they first meet, it's like fireworks, right? Because
Right.
the avoidant person is used to being emotionally neglected, and usually the anxious person is bursting with love, because
Right,
they just
right.
want love and attention, and
Mhm.
you know and so the avoidants will obviously at first find that very attractive, all that attention I'm getting and that
Yeah,
connection, whatnot. But the things that they originally find attractive about each other is really what breaks them apart very quickly.
I can see that.
Because this person, the anxious person, really has a very poor relationship with boundaries.
Mhm.
Um, And whereas the avoidant is very strong with their boundaries. So that will come up very early on. Things like, how much time should we be spending together? How much alone time do you need? You only want to see me 3 days a week. Why not 5 days a week?
Right.
Comes up real early when you're negotiating some of those early parts of the relationship, because what the two of these people need to both feel their best selves, like to try and emotionally regulate, is very different.
Yeah.
So it's a real interesting dynamic. You know, to just sort of thicken the plot a little bit more, the last style is the fearful avoidant, which in romantic terms is often called the hot and the cold partner. The fearful avoidant is kind of in the middle here, with parts of anxious attachment and parts of avoidant attachment, depending on who they're interacting with. This style was also called disorganized attachment for a period of time. This style often will evolve when a child comes out of a home that was incredibly chaotic, or we see oftentimes where they came out of a home where there was abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, could be sexual abuse, right? And what happens is that the child, their mind, their psyche becomes very disorganized in a sense, because they're yearning for the love, acceptance, validation of their primary caregiver.
Right.
Let's say it's their father. But at the same time, let's say in this case, the father is also, let's say, physically harming them. And so the child becomes so incredibly confused.
It's gotta be incredibly confusing.
It's incredibly confusing. And so, you know, they develop this, like, I come close, but then I take 2 steps back. I want your love, but I'm afraid of you. And so that pattern repeats into adulthood, where these people become hot and cold. One minute they want the closeness and the love, and the next minute they're pulling away because the vulnerability is just, the intimacy is too scary for them. Right?
Okay. I have to say, and I have permission for this, but that's my ex-husband. And it is so fascinating because
it is, isn't it?
Totally, right? Like 1 minute and the next. And for me, someone that dealt with shame, right? It's like, oh, I'm broken. They don't want me. And what's wrong with me? And of course, I either retreated or became very angry. So
retreated or became very angry. So you're, I could already predict that you are going to fall onto the avoidant side.
Yeah, I could see.
Okay, so, and please do when you take.
I can't wait.
Send me the results so we can talk about it.
So a couple things that I've been thinking as you've been speaking. I mean, this is something obviously that we can't unpack and really be able to, have everything covered in one. We have to do a follow-up to this, because I
usually do more than one session.
Oh, yeah. You need to come back.
There's a lot to discuss.
So interesting how, as coaches, we have to do our own work in order for us to be able to, and we're not showing up because we're the experts in this. We may be a little 10 steps in front of you, but this is something that helps us to be able to then, share or fast track something that maybe, hey, I went through that. Here's your easy button. And sometimes we as coaches want to not talk about, right, the brokenness, the things that are we still struggle with, because we're afraid, and it will make us vulnerable, and maybe people will think we're not good enough, right? And for many of my clients, that's what really takes, it knocks their confidence out, because they're not at a point in which they can see the work that they still need to do, or they know that they're doing work, but they don't want people to know.
So I think the best coaches, therapists, guides are those who have actually experienced, right? So it's one thing to read. I mean, I've done both. I've experienced this. I've spent my life mostly as a fearful avoidant before I went through the work to move towards secure attachment. And I've also studied out of a book, and I've also So, I've done both, but I find that when you have true life experience, you understand the nuances and how it actually feels.
Yeah.
Things that you can't get out of a book,
It's
right?
so good. It's so good
it is
that
good.
you're able to make that type of work.
Yeah.
Because again, it's, and I will usually say to my listeners, you can look at a recipe and say, I'm going to follow the recipe. But it's not until you're actually making the recipe that well, do you need more time in the oven? The temperature varies. What the little things that we sometimes don't understand. I'm on a
Yeah.
quest to making bread, and every couple weeks and I have the same recipe but different variations of it. And I'm not very good at following recipes to begin with, but I know that you have to be very specific. And it's been so
Yeah.
fascinating to see how, even if you're switching a little bit of it, how the end product changes. And I think that
Yeah.
this is the thing, right? We need to keep trying. We need to keep testing it out and seeing what works for us under our circumstances.
Exactly. Right. And I don't necessarily look at healing as like a finite
Yeah,
destination,
no,
right? It's like the loaf of
100%.
bread comes out, it's beautiful, it's done. There's
Never,
nothing more to
never.
do. You slice it up
You're
and
going to
enjoy
need
it,
more
right?
bread. You're going to get hungry again.
Right. I mean, when I
Yeah.
talk about attachment styles being on a continuum, right, we're moving towards secure attachment where you develop healthy self-esteem. You have trust in yourself once again. You start to learn to trust others with boundaries. Where you may not understand boundaries if you're on the anxious side. So, we teach about, of course, boundaries, but also understanding your own personality needs.
Yeah.
So the level of, let's say, interaction or loving touch that you would need, again, goes back to your attachment style.
Oh,
And so if you understand yourself really well, you're so well positioned to be able to then communicate to someone else, this is how I feel my best.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we always talk about, relationships require a lot of communication. And it's not that I disagree with that statement, but I think it's a half statement. Like, it's one thing to say, okay, I can find words, but many people don't even understand their own thought patterns, their own emotions to
Absolutely.
be able to communicate. What am I going to communicate if I don't understand why
Yeah.
I'm acting the way that I am?
Yeah, I just, my mom moved in with us, and as a caretaker now, obviously I have to navigate a little bit of that. But I found myself, I was so mad, and I might have talked about this in another recording. I was so mad at my husband the other day, and I know my love language and I know his, and I was loading the dishwasher, and I'm like, I guess if I want to clean dishes, I have to load the dishwasher. And for me, I'm not in words of affirmation like he is. I'm an acts of service.
Acts of service.
And I remember I stopped in the middle and I thought, and he came in and he was all so happy, and he said, I'm feeling unloved because you haven't said, and whatever it is that he did, he needed to hear from me. And at that moment, I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm loading the dishwasher, but I had to stop, take a breath and say, okay, it's not about me. I know this is what I'm feeling, but he needs this, right? And I needed to communicate, yes, give him what he needs, but also say, hey, by the way, this is what I'm thinking and me not. I know it's not real. This is what I'm, where I'm dealing with and where I'm coming from. So although you may need a lot of words, I can only give you this much because I need a beat. That's the communication.
Beautiful. Yeah,
That's the communication that I think a lot of times I was missing in other relationships.
Many of us were, right?
Yeah.
And so, no, I applaud you. I think that that's beautiful. Love languages are definitely important. Understanding yourself is important.
Yeah.
But, I'll tell you, anytime, like the first sign of being emotionally dysregulated, the first sign is always irritability. So as soon as you notice, I'm a little irritable right now, ask yourself, what's triggering me? What's,
Yeah.
and so if you can figure that out in your mind, you can then say to your partner something like, look, I am a little irritable right now because I'm
Mhm.
really tired and I want to lay down, but I can't lay down until the
Yeah.
dishes are done
Right.
because I feel like I can't relax until the dishes are done. So I'm just
Yeah.
annoyed that I have to do it. I would have really loved if you had done it.
Yeah. And you know what? All it takes is asking sometimes.
Right? But instead of like yelling or instead of like, why are the dishes so important?
Yeah.
Well, the dishes are important because I feel like it needs to get done before I
Mhm.
can allow myself to relax.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
right?
And that whole, irregularity when it comes to our emotions.
Mhm.
I have noticed that for me, even though it's very easy, right, to lash out or say immediately what I'm thinking or feeling and, be in combative, one of the things that I learned is that no, I need to retreat. I need to stop. I need to take a breath because I've learned, right, neurons that fire together bond together. And I don't want that. I want to really be able to rewire my brain. So I'll
Yeah.
take a breath and I'll say, okay, what am I grateful for this instance right now? What am I thinking?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm thinking this, and really just taking myself down a notch.
Yeah, it's so beautiful that you learned how to do this. Some people learn how to do this in childhood, and
Mhm.
many people
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
And so it is our responsibility as adults to learn how to do this so that
Mhm.
we feel better in our own skin, and
Mhm.
that we're not causing chaos for the people
Yeah.
around us. Because when you're emotionally dysregulated, you are
Mhm.
really hard to be around.
No, 100%.
Right? Other
100%.
people are walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
They're nervous about what you're going to say or do. It's
Yeah.
just it's not enjoyable. So, you're causing undue stress on your family, friends,
Mhm.
colleagues, romantic partner, and so
Yeah.
forth. So, you know, repair the relationship you have to yourself,
That's right. We have
but
to
then
start with ourselves. It's not about the
always.
people around us. It's not about, being, we're, again, like we said, reaching a destination. It's about that awareness, doing the work and trying to, okay, now I know better, I'll do better. And it doesn't
Yes.
mean that even when you're doing better, you're going to get it right. Give yourself
Yeah.
grace. And this is the most important thing that, working with a trusted advisor and someone like you can really help us to navigate a lot of that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I always use myself as a gauge. So maybe I didn't get it entirely right today, but I got it better than I did yesterday.
Yeah,
So, okay.
absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
we're making progress.
Making
Yeah.
progress is all we
Yeah.
can hope for.
Yeah.
Bev, so fascinating. Again, I'm so glad that we unpacked so many different things. I could probably talk to you all day, but I know that you probably have other things as I do. But for the listeners, I want to just encourage the listeners. Number one, they need to go to your and take the quiz. I'm going to take it. I'm going to be sharing what my result is. And the quiz is, do you know your own attachment style? And probably we don't. And although we unpacked a lot of that, I want to encourage you to go to Bev's website, and that is securelylove.com. And the attachment quiz is /attachment quiz, but you'll see it in the front page where to go. And if you want to connect with Bev, which I highly encourage you to do, I want you to share with her a little bit of what is one great golden nugget takeaway that you got from this episode, because sometimes we need to give props to the people that shine the light on the things that help us in our journey to confidence. And Bev, how can people else connect with you? Where is another great place for them to connect?
Thank you. I so appreciate that. We are on social media, Instagram at
Mhm.
securely_loved. We are also on YouTube, and I'm trying to figure out
Mm.
YouTube. I'm a therapist, so
Oh,
trying to figure out social media
okay. Well, I
algorithms.
got you. If you need YouTube, I'll tell you all the things that we know.
That's
So,
great because I've got all this great content. Now I'm
yeah,
trying
you
to figure out
do.
how do I push it out to people.
Mhm.
But we do have a channel with lots of videos.
So
So you
good.
can, there's also all free resources where people can
Yeah.
go and learn about attachment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is
Uh,
so needed. And I think that, the
it's
more that we
needed.
do the work in ourselves, the better we're going to show up, whether it
Yeah.
be our business, our relationships, or even in our communities. And right now, our communities, and we live in a world that's very contentious, and
Very.
we must take responsibility for how we're showing up and
Yeah.
what we're doing, because that creates that ripple effect in the world.
I agree. And, and again, you will feel so much better, right?
Yeah.
So if you're dealing with issues of anxiety, depression, like oftentimes they're intertwined, right? So
Yeah.
like into that emotional regulation work that we do.
Of course. Yeah.
You can also book a free 20-minute consult with me or any of the practitioners working with Securely Loved. And
Great.
we can go from there. You could book that on our website at securelyloved.com.
Okay, well, amazing. And Bev, we're going to stop the recording, but you and I are going to talk a little bit more about you coming back, or maybe we'll do a special series with these episodes. But so grateful that you took the time to be here. So grateful that you are doing the work on yourself as well. You've been in this journey, and now you are helping others navigate it. So I appreciate it. And my friends, go and share this episode, because there's some golden nuggets, not just for you, but for your friends, and bookmark it, because you can come back to it, and especially as you're doing some of the work on yourself. So thank you so much, everybody. And until next time, Bev, friend, go confidently in the direction of your dreams.
Thanks for listening to Casa De Confidence. We thank you for listening, and if you want more, go to casadeconfidencepod.com. Check Julie out on her socials as Julie DeLucca-Collins. And you can also check out her website at goconfidentlycoaching.com. Have a great week, and don't forget, go confidently in the direction of your dreams.
Hi, everybody. I know that sometimes we get very lonely in this entrepreneur journey, and I want to invite you to join us into our limited time only Purposeful You Mastermind. For many of us entrepreneurs, we believe that we can do it all, but the reality is that doing it alone only creates a lot of overwhelm. So join us at the Purposeful You Mastermind. You can find out more information by going to bit.ly/Julie's Mastermind. This is going to be the place where you are able to then unlock your full potential and achieve long-term success for your business, push you behind your current limits, expand your connections, discover new ideas, and implement them with confidence. You're going to get the support in all aspects and transforming you to the six-figure business you've been looking for. Pause and get off the hamster wheel if you've been spinning around. This is a time where you can get that support from like-minded entrepreneurs that are here to join you in your journey. Together, we can challenge the assumptions and land the speaking engagements and opportunities we want to grow our business and make an impact in the lives of people. See you then. Remember, you can find the mastermind at bit.ly Julie's Mastermind.